If everyone could turn on their microphones. Good. Good morning, everyone. This is the Wayne County Ethics Board meeting. Today's date is Wednesday, December 18th, 2019. Calling this meeting into session. We're now moving to the order of business of the day, our agenda, which is under item A, which is roll call.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Mr. Hendricks? Is requesting an excuse. Ms. Hammoud?
Here. Good morning.
Dr. Carnell?
Here.
Ms. Bucero? Judge Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Pinkins?
Here.
You have a quorum present.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. All right, moving on to our next order of business. We have the approval of the October 16, 2019 meeting minutes. Have all members had the opportunity, or have all members received a copy of those meeting minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
And has everyone had the opportunity to review those minutes?
Yes.
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 At this time, I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes. There's a motion.
Moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, so moved. Moving on to unfinished business, under item C, section 1, is communication from Ms. Denise Alexander et al. Regarding circuit court employee. And at this time, I'm going to ask if everyone has received a copy of the complaint by Ms. Alexander and the, my understanding is, other complainants, as well as a response from the respondent.
Yes.
Yes.
And I believe there was a follow-up response as well.
Yes.
So if everyone has received that, I'm going to ask if Ms. Alexander or any of the court employees are present at this time. Your name is, ma'am? Ms. Gilbert. Is Ms. Alexander or anyone else, any of the complainants here at this time? Okay. Generally, what we'll do is hear from the complainant, and then we'll hear from the respondent. So they-
Just through the chair,
Sure.
I did receive a communication from, or several communications from the complainants who are stating they can't get the time off. We sent a letter to the county clerk that they asked for an adjournment last night. I told them we could not adjourn it because of the time frame for the actual determination of the complaint. So I don't know if any of them are going to show.
Okay. All right. Since Ms. Gilbert is here today, then my understanding is we hold the hearing today, we were right at the 150-day mark, my
Yes,
understanding.
that is correct.
So if we hold the hearing today, can we preserve Ms. Gilbert's testimony and continue this matter?
Well, I think we're right at the 150-day mark. I don't know that there's a precedent one way or the other. The ordinance is that you have to make a determination within the 150, as I understand it. It's not just hold a hearing. You have to make a determination. I suppose you could entertain a recommendation and then make a preliminary determination today and allow them to respond to the preliminary determination. So you made a determination, just not a final determination. It's kind of strained, but. Yep.
Okay. Is there any comments from any board members with respect to this matter?
Not here. Nope.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask Ms. Gilbert to come forward. Ms. Gilbert, if you can come and have a seat at the table. I'm going to ask you to speak into the mic, just so that, yes, that's fine. If you can, there's a button right there on the mic, if you can just turn that on, if you can speak into the mic. Yes. Good morning, Ms. Gilbert. I'm just going to thank you on behalf of this board for being here. I assume you've received a copy of the complaint that was filed against you, and my understanding is you've had the opportunity to file a response to that complaint. And as I mentioned, generally we would have the complainants here that would, or the complainant that would start out, sort of addressing the allegations in their complaint. And then we'll give the respondent the opportunity to respond. As you heard, the complainants are not here. They state they couldn't get the time off to be here. So since you are here, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take your response to the allegations, and we'll entertain any questions from the board members, and then we'll proceed from there. So again, I'm going to thank you for being here. Good morning. I'm going to open up the floor to you.
Okay. Good morning again. My name is Tracy Gilbert, and I did, hopefully everyone on the board received my response to the allegations that was alleged against me. Would you like for me to read?
You can do that. That's fine.
Okay. The first question is, Tracy Gilbert is the wife of Court Clerk Darren Gilbert. Yes, that is true. However, we've been separated for more than 10 years, and I have filed for divorce, and he has been served. Question number 1B, while she was not directly supervising him, she indirectly supervised him. Answer is true. It is true. I do not directly supervise the court clerks, which also is my husband as well, soon to be ex-husband. Let me clarify that. There's 3 layers of supervisors between myself and him. Question number 1C, Ms. Gilbert gives all instructions, directives, and disciplines to the clerks. The court clerk supervisor, which is Shelley McLean, she's the immediate supervisor, and Lisa Peterson, she's the other supervisor. There's also Joyce Wright, and there's also Theodore White, who also are layers there. In my role as the administrator, I go over various things, but as far as discipline and all of that, that is always done from, discipline is always suggested from the supervisors. They will bring it to me to discuss the discipline, and then I would take it over and send it up to upper administration to discuss it. So the final decision is never mine. Mrs. Gilbert, in her capacity as the department administrator, she has never conducted a meeting with the court clerks to discuss any issues or concerns. When I first went over as the administrator over at Criminal Division, we scheduled a couple of meetings to try to meet with the court clerks. We usually try to have the meetings during the bench meeting, because it's sort of hard to get them all together to meet with them during lunch hour, because sometimes the benches, court is still in session. And most of them, after office hours, they have to take care of their children or some things at home. So it's hard to schedule meetings, but we've tried to, and we had one meeting that was scheduled, but then I ended up being called to a meeting over at KMAX, so I was not in attendance. Since then, we have had a meeting to find out what the court clerks' concerns were, and in doing so, we found out that most of their concerns is pay, wanting, they don't want the e-filing to become an part of our work. They want more bodies, and those type of things has nothing to do with me. That's basically it. That's what their concerns are. It is our belief that Mr. Gilbert does not comply with the policies. That is not true. I have his file, like I requested his file from his supervisor before I came over, and it does show that he too is held accountable. But once again, that is not my call. That's the immediate supervisor's call. And it does show that he's been written up for unsatisfactory work performance. He's been written up for his attendance. He's been written up for failure to scan. All of those issues that apply to all the court clerks, that he's not receiving any other different treatments than the other ones. He's been held accountable to the policies and the procedures. Let's see. As a result, Mr. Gilbert receives preferential treatments. Okay, I did answer that. That is false. Their immediate supervisor handles, like I stated, handles the discipline, and they make certain that all staff is being held accountable, and they're following the policies and the procedures. Recently, Mr. Gilbert took vacation time together. Okay, so yes, Mr. Gilbert and I do have a child together. He's 18 years old. He just went away to school. As far as what if his time was approved or not, that doesn't I have nothing to do with that. Darren and I did go to take our son to college, and then we also went one time for football. He had a football game because he plays football in college. I don't know how his vacation, if it was vacation, how it was approved. I don't have anything to do with that.
That's it? Okay, is that it?
That's basically it.
Okay. At this time, I think all the board members have heard your responses in that. I'm going to open up to the board members to ask any questions at this time. Is there any questions from any members?
I have one.
Dr. Cornell.
Ms. Gilbert, you said you didn't know about the, whether or not you have nothing to do with their personal time off. One of the allegations from the complainants was that they were denied time off. Do you know anything about that?
No, I do not know because once again, they submit their requests to their media supervisor, and so I'm not aware of any of that.
So tell me how the complaint process works. So if clerks are within your division and they feel that something has happened that wasn't right, then they complain to their immediate supervisor, right?
Yes.
And so it never gets to you.
No, it does.
Okay.
Yes.
So this means that if they felt that they were unfair, this is the first time you've heard these type of allegations?
As far as when you say unfair, are you referring to unfair saying that Darren Gilbert was granted time off?
Any treatment of where they believe that that it was unfair in relationship to him? Yes.
This would be the first time.
It doesn't have to be just the time off, but any part of it. Has any of your indirect employees ever come to you either through your supervisor, through their supervisor, or through any of your direct reports come to you with any notion that they felt that Darren was getting preferential treatment or treated unfairly, or there was a conflict of interest?
This is the first time of me hearing this, and that was when I received this ethic complaint.
Okay.
Let me just jump in if I can. Just a quick question, because you're saying this is the first time that you're hearing of this when you received the complaint?
To the question, if I'm correct, the question that you posed to me is have any of the employees come to me, complain to me about their time being denied and over Darren receiving time? I'm sorry.
That's okay. It was initially the question, and then I made it a little bit broader. So
Okay.
anybody in your whole organization chart have ever come to you on any complaints regarding conflict of interest or anything of that nature where they felt that that Darren was given preferential treatment, or there was conflict of interest, or something else was going on regarding your relationship with your husband, who still is your husband until you're divorced, right? Separated or not, about how he was treated versus the rest of the team?
This is the first time, and that's when I received this complaint in writing. Had this was brought to my attention prior to receiving this, I would have definitely addressed it.
Okay, then just to follow up on that question, because I'm looking at the questions from one of the complainants which you addressed. Question 1D, Mrs. Gilbert in her capacity as department administrator has never conducted a meeting with the court clerks to discuss any of our issues and concerns. And then you said you're true. I recall a meeting was scheduled for the department, but I was unable to attend the meeting called by upper administration because you was called by upper management administration to KMAC. Any event, I usually do not attend department meetings because I am not involved in the day-to-day operations of the department. So when you were going to attend this meeting to address their issues and concerns, they had not raised, this was the part of their issues and concerns, that the fact that your husband, that they said, was getting this preferential treatment, and they, so what, under your understanding, was the meeting to be about, that you were supposed to attend, but you couldn't attend because you was called to KMAC?
The meeting was going to be in detail more so of court clerks, like bring it to their attention about the e-filing, about the scanning, court rule changes, various things like that. They have never brought nothing else to my attention about, it was just going to be a regular court clerk meeting.
Follow up.
Okay, yes, Dr. Cornell.
So does that mean their immediate supervisors brought this up to you, or your direct reports brought this up to you?
The media supervisor was regular court clerk meeting, and I was going to be in attendance because once the e-filing and the scanning procedure is new over there at Frank Murphy. They weren't really aware of it. So any questions that they may have had, meaning the court clerks, I would have been there to address the questions.
So then that means, if I'm understanding correctly, that the clerks did not even tell their immediate supervisor that they felt that there was any type of preferential treatment or conflict of interest regarding your husband.
This is the very first time of me hearing anything. If they did share that with their media supervisor, the media supervisor never shared it with me.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams, I'm sorry.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Gilbert. Can I ask you just a few questions? One, when did you assume the position that you're currently in?
Oh, my goodness. 2018, I want to say end of March of 2018. Yeah, because I'm going into my second year.
And your husband was a clerk at the time that you assumed that position?
Yes.
And as I understand it from your response, there was a letter that was included in your response saying that the clerk's office had evaluated your appointment to the position for a potential concern about conflict of interest and determined that you fell within an exception because of various intermediate supervisors.
Yes.
Do you know when that request was made? It was made before you were appointed to the position?
Let me go back. You're talking about the letter. I'm looking at a response from Patricia Ways, the deputy county clerk.
Yes, that's the letter I'm talking about.
Okay. This is the only letter that I know. I've never, once again, all of this was brought to my attention since the complaint. If there were any issues that was raised prior to me assuming the position, I was not a party to any of it. So once I received the complaint is when I found out that it had already been investigated, and the union brought that up prior to me assuming that position.
Okay, so you weren't aware of the evaluation by the county clerk at all?
No, sir.
And then you indicated that you have filed for divorce. When did you file for divorce?
November of this year.
So that was after you filed your response here? Because you had mentioned that in your response. So is that after you filed your response?
Yes, sir.
And you said your husband was served. When was he served?
He was served on December the 2nd.
And where does your son play football?
He plays for Lafayette College in Eastern Pennsylvania.
Good school.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, Mr. Young.
So, Ms. Gilbert, you assumed your position in 2018. Were you employed with the county before you took your supervisory role?
Yes.
Where?
I was over at Civil Family as a department administrator there.
Okay, and how was it that you became the supervisor with the court? Was it something that, did somebody reach out to you and ask you if you were interested? Did you apply? How did that occur?
As a supervisor I've been the department administrator for many years. I just
Maybe I misunderstood. The position that you currently hold, you've held that position since 2018? No?
No,
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
All right,
It's
how
all
long
right.
have you been in your current position with the court?
Current position, I was the department, okay, so I want to say 7, 8 years as a department administrator. It was a lateral transfer. I was the department administrator over Civil Family, and when the criminal position became available, I requested to transfer over to criminal to learn something different.
Okay, so, and that request and ultimate transfer happened in 2018?
The request was approved, yes.
2018. What was your soon-to-be ex-husband, so he had been employed as a clerk in the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice for how long, if you know?
20-some years.
Okay. And the letter that I was looking at was from a Mr. David Skillman,
Yes.
and he represented to our attorney that that it appears, I'm looking at the second paragraph, that let's see, where he indicates or alludes to the fact that the clerk's office is what Mr. Williams was talking about, had conducted a review of your transfer or your whatever the situation was, and made a determination that this did not violate the ethics ordinance, as far as you know. And I'm sorry, did you participate in that discussion or review with the clerk's office?
No, sir.
Do you know if that in fact did occur?
This is what I was told, once again, after this complaint was brought to my attention.
Did you know when you made the transfer to the current position that you hold that there was a question at all about your ability to transfer to that position without some sort of concern regarding an ethics ordinance or any other matter that might cause a problem?
I'm sorry, I would say no.
Okay.
I didn't.
Did you have a discussion with the person that hired you at all about any of this?
No.
So you were employed then with the county for many years, it just, you transferred. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at here is your husband or soon-to-be ex-husband was employed for 20-some years, and you had been employed with the county for close to a decade, if not longer. And what we're looking at here and we're concerned with is that a relative or domestic partner may not be hired by the county if it would create a direct or indirect subordinate relationship, or number two, it created an actual conflict of interest. So you don't know at the time that you were transferred if in fact that was reviewed, that section of the ordinance was reviewed as it relates to the ethics. Is that right?
What I can share with you, Mr. Young, if it's okay with you for me to call you Mr. Young?
Yeah, you call me whatever.
Okay, is that my husband and I have been separated, living separate lives, separate residencies for 10 years plus, okay? And the only thing we have in common is our son, co-parenting, to make certain that he was provided what he needs to be a successful adult. With that being said, when I made the recommendation to transfer over to Frank Murphy Hall, he and I had no dealings in any way, shape, or form other than the only thing we have in common is my son. So I am the type of person whereas I value my job and policies and procedures, and I'm going to follow policies and procedures because that's, in other words, I didn't think that it would have been a problem to transfer over there because he's going to be treated as everyone else. If he's violating the policies and procedures, I'm certain that the supervisor will hold him accountable. There was not going to be no special treatment for him. So I didn't think that once again, I didn't think that there would be a problem for me to transfer over there. And no one ever really said anything when I made the suggestion. Now, my immediate supervisor, Miss Pat Ways and Mrs. Garrett, they all are aware that he and I have been separated for many years. And that's all I did was make the recommendation. And then once they came to me and they let me know that I was going to be transferred over there, all of the back with the union and anything else, I am not aware of any of that.
Do you have a job description that you were given when the transfer occurred?
I'm just a department administrator.
Was there a written job description or no?
I was not provided one.
All right. Do you know if part of your job description or what is expected of you would be to supervise all of the employees that are, for lack of a better word, under you?
Yes,
And yet, there are at least a couple layers of supervisors between you and all of the court clerks, not just your soon-to-be ex-husband.
yes,
And in all circumstances, when it relates to discipline or review or employee reviews, that activity is always conducted by those other supervisors that are, again, below you?
yes.
Are the results of those investigations shared with you?
Yes,
Are they discussed with you?
yes.
And the purpose that you have these discussions is to make a final decision, or is it just to be updated on what's going on?
Both. Updated and to make a final decision.
Right?
Question.
Yes, Ms. Cornell.
Ms. Gilbert, when you transferred over, did you disclose that your husband worked there?
My immediate supervisors are aware that my husband works there. He's been over there for 20-something years.
Did you disclose that information
To my immediate supervisors?
before you transferred over?
Yes.
And if I just may add, how did you disclose that information, Mr. Gilbert? Did you send them an
That-
email? Did you put it in writing to them?
The only thing I told him is that I had not filed for my divorce and that I was waiting until my son reaches the age of 18 and he was away in school, and then I was filing for my divorce.
So that was a verbal communication, there was nothing written up, or that you provided to them to state to them? You didn't do a conflict of interest form or anything like that, stating that you do have another relative within the department that works there?
No.
Miss Cornell, I think you had the floor.
I'm done, thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, Mr. Williams asked the questions I wanted.
Well, just one follow-up, following up with Ms. Cornell in the chair's question. So,
I'm sorry.
Go
May
ahead. Oh, okay.
I comply with, is that okay? Is that no.
Excuse me, what's that?
I would just like to speak with my union president, if I may.
Sure, that's fine.
And to be aware of it because they made the review. This guy is just saying.
Okay. May I just add one thing to the last question before we move to the next question, please?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Young, your question was in regards,
Well, I'm looking again at the letter from Mr. Skillman. And Dr. Carnell and the chair asked you about if you had notified the clerk's office when you were offered the opportunity to make the transfer. And you said that you did, at least verbally, from what you recall. But according to his letter, and this is important to me, there was some investigation that had been conducted, or review, I don't know if investigation is the right word, and that there was a determination made that this transfer would not violate the section of the of the ordinance that we've been talking about. But you don't have any actual knowledge that that review or that consideration ever occurred. Is that right?
Yes.
The only time or the first time that you found out that the clerk's office even took the time to look at this would have been when you saw Mr. Skillman's letter or you had the discussions following the complaint being filed.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So just if I may, please, to clarify the question in regards to the supervisors bringing situations to my attention as far as potential write-ups or disciplines. Just like I shared with you all earlier, is that, yes, they do bring things to my attention for discussion, and then what they suggested write-ups are going to be, but then it also is taken over to upper administration, which is Pat Ways, to take a look at it to make certain, and actually the final decision is actually with Mrs. Ways.
Yes, Mr. Williams.
Yes, who is Mrs. Wade?
Oh, sorry, Patricia Ways, the deputy county clerk. All write-ups and things like that must go through her.
And one additional question. During the time you have been in this position since March of 2018, have you participated in any write-ups that involved your husband?
No.
Have you participated in any kind of actions that were directly involving your husband and any of the clerks?
When you say participate,
Yeah, other than general oversight functions, have you done anything that was involving your husband, separate and independent, approving of vacation requests, anything? of that?
no.
Clarification.
Yes, Dr. Cornell.
I believe Ms. Gilbert did say they are discussed with her, right?
But just for further clarification, you indicated you brought his personnel file. I guess my question is, in that personnel file between March of 2018 and to the present date, is there anything that involves any discipline for your husband that may have been discussed with you, reflected in the personnel file?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, any further questions? I'm just, excuse me, I'm just going to ask a few. And you had mentioned, I think Dr. Cannell had mentioned, or I believe Mr. Young had mentioned, when the supervisors have any questions or concerns, they come to you, and I think you said that you would make the final decision. Is that still correct, or would you like to clarify that, or?
They will come to me to discuss, and I would say, oh, okay, it seemed like that is all right, but we need to talk to Pat Ways. So that the final decision, rather, discipline is going to be implemented, comes from Pat Ways.
Okay, because did you see in receiving the complaint, did you see they had like a flow chart there that they provided for us? I'm going to apologize, I have a little code here. But there was a flow chart and that they provided for us, if you have that in your stack there. And in the flow chart, they don't have anyone here above that as being the top person other than yourself. They have Tracy Gilbert as Department Administrator 3. Mm-hmm. Below you, they have Shelley McLean. Then under Miss McLean, they have Joyce Wright, Supervisor 1, Lisa Peterson, Supervisor, and then Theodore White. And then they have the court clerks. They don't have a layer above that shows that Ms. Ways is some kind of way an administrator of a person that you report to. So what you're saying is that person also should be in this flow chart, that they would also be making decisions as well, or?
That is the process, that's the policy and procedures that the county clerk's office follows. That's for all three divisions, Lincoln Hall, Civil Family, and Frank Murphy. So Lincoln Hall, KMAC, and Frank Murphy. Before any discipline can be rendered, we have to submit it to Mrs. Ways to review first.
Okay. And then one question, another question here you had mentioned. You normally said that you held meetings with the clerks to discuss some of the e-filings and things like that, if there's concerns there. You did mention that that would be a meeting that you would have attended and that you did not know about this complaint or any issues with your husband prior to hearing of the complaint. But that this meeting that they had addressed that you would have attended had you not been called away, you stated that at that meeting, your understanding was to discuss policies and concerns with e-filing and other issues with the clerks, and that you did not know about any issues with your husband. But in your response here to the complaint, question 1D, and she said here that you did not, your capacity as department administrator, you've never conducted meetings with court clerks to discuss any of our concerns. The last sentence of your response here, you said, in any event, I usually do not attend department meetings because I am not involved in the day-to-day operations of the department. So are you saying the issues and concerns that you have met with them to talk about, namely the e-filings and things like that, those are not day-to-day operations that you would be involved in? Because it seems like you've held meetings, from what you've said, to talk about that with the clerks.
So the reason why I was going to be in attendance for this meeting, for the court clerk meeting, was because when the e-filing became a goal, when we received the administrative order from the Supreme Court 2011-1, which governed us, the criminal division, to do subsequent filings. The immediate supervisor sent out an email to the court clerks informing them of the e-filing. However, they was also informed of the scanning because we're not going to be doing e-filing in the courtrooms right now. So the court clerks were having an issue with that. So when the media supervisor scheduled a court clerks meeting, it was asked, can I please attend, because they didn't know how to answer some of the questions if it came up. Normally, back when I was the administrator over civil family, I was not attending court clerks meetings. That was done, and attendance was with the supervisors there. Now, if the supervisor had a particular issue or something like that they would like for me to address, then I will attend the meetings. But I normally don't attend the meetings because I'm not personally involved with the day-to-day operations. With the e-filing and the scanning, because it's all new to them over in criminal, and we've been doing it for years over in civil, I am aware of it. So that was the reason why I was going to attend to assist with any questions that they may have. And if I may also add one more thing, please. The court clerks have received emails from the media supervisors to share with them any issues or concerns that they may have in writing. They refuse to put anything in writing. I have an open door policy. They can always come up and see me. They can also send me an email. None of this has ever been done. Is this still on? None of this has ever been done. So once again, this is all new to me.
So you're saying you've never received any emails, any complaints from any clerks?
No.
Okay, because it's funny that you mentioned that, because I looked at one of the responses from one of the complainants, and one of the responses was in fact an email. And in an email, actually, she CCs you in the email. This is from Renee Owens Wilson. I believe she is one of the complainants. And in this complaint, and I think you did say before, the complaints do not get to you, that they don't get you, that they generally handled by the supervisor. But this here, she sent this to you. I think it went to also Elisa Peterson, and she talked about having to file her own court sheets. And she had issue with doing that. She talked about her workload being burdensome, the amount of work she had to do, not having to work through her lunches and whatnot. So it seemed like she was having an issue with this. And she sent it to Miss Peterson. She also CC'd you. And you responded to the email. And you said, good morning, Miss Renee. Receipt of your email. I would take this as a complaint that she was bringing to your attention. So when you're saying you don't get these emails or they don't write emails to you, you responded here. You said, Shelley is out, but she'll be in tomorrow. She responded back, good morning, no problem. She was looking to meeting with you tomorrow to receive an explanation. And you said and she gave you a time, and you said, and she said she worked through her lunch hour, she worked after work, trying to do her court sheets. You stated, thank you for getting back to us. Management will let you know what time is good for us. So when you say they've never written an email to you of any concerns and complaints, this is an email that they've provided right here that they've sent to you.
Okay, so when you're talking about now, I'm thinking that you're saying concerns with me as it relates to my soon-to-be ex-husband. Because once again, this is what I'm thinking that you're saying, that they had concerns about potential conflict of interest. For something like that there, it was just a mere thing as to where now, because she's required to enter her court sheets, that was something that, yeah, I was copied in, and the media supervisor was not available to respond to her, and I was trying to address it, to at least acknowledge the fact that someone in supervision read her email as opposed to it going without being responded to.
Okay, excuse me. So, but if they had concerns with issues of preferential treatment to your husband, then that would also be in the form of an email like that, you would say?
Yes.
Okay.
I try to acknowledge any and everyone. If the media supervisor is not available and staff sends an email, even if I'm copied in on it, I at least respond back to them to respect their issues, to let them know that someone in management did read it.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Carnell.
I think I just have a couple of more questions. You mentioned earlier that your husband has received write-ups, right?
Yes, doctor.
And so therefore, do you know if other people have received write-ups, or are his write-ups more than the other clerks? And if so, what happens? Why is he still in that position? Anything along that?
I know other people has received write-ups as far as their attendance and unsatisfactory work performance. So I think it's all, I'm just guessing, if that's okay. That is all on the same line. If you're not completing your assignments daily, and or you're failing to scan in, or you have poor attendance, all of that is being addressed.
Based on this complaint, have you done anything different? Or are you planning to do anything different?
Yes, I have done. I have done some things different. Yes, I did meet with the court clerks, like I said, to find out, since they refused to send in writing to me what their concerns are as it relates to me as being the administrator. I met with them, and it was after work, and once again, the only issues that they had was they feel as though they're underpaid. There's not enough staffing, and there's too much work, and they don't want to do the scanning. And also the fact that sometimes when they request to take a day off, depending on if we have two people already off, we have to deny it or not. That was their other issue, because we're understaffed. We can't cover the courtrooms.
Let me ask you this question again. How long had you said you and your husband have been separated?
For over 10 years now. It's been over 10 years.
And you have been separated for over 10 years, but the testimony you gave here today was that you just filed for divorce in November, and he was served in December 2nd of this month.
Yes.
So would it be safe to say that this complaint spurred the divorce?
No, it's not. It's safe to say that I stayed with him, so my son just turned 18 in May. He just went away to school in August. I'm sorry. I thought I turned it off.
That's okay. You want to go ahead and take care of it?
Please.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
I apologize. Okay. Could you repeat the question?
The question was, as you had stated, that you've been married you've been separated from Mr. Gilbert, your husband, for 10 years, but yet you stated that you just filed for divorce in November, after this complaint had been filed, and you stated that your husband was just served December 2nd of this month with that divorce, and my question was, did the complaint spur the divorce? Because you have been separated for 10 years. And so, my concern is, after this complaint was filed, it seems as though now you're filing for divorce. So and I think you had started to answer that question.
Okay. And my answer is no. Like I shared with you all, that my son is 18 and we stayed married to co-parent with my son, and it was just easier to register him in school with the same last name and things like that there. So it was just easier for us to do it. And then also I had told my son that my son and I had talked about it, and he just said to me, "Mom, would you mind not filing until after I am out of high school?" And I said, "Certainly."
I think Ms. Hamoud has a question. Ms. Hamoud?
Yes, I mean, I'm looking at this, and I can tell you so far, I'm looking that based on the ethics ordinance, that there is a violation of one of the sections, nepotism, because it's clear that, according to the ordinance, that a relative or domestic partner may not be hired. However, if the employment would create a direct or indirect supervisor, subordinate relationship.
Okay.
And I think it's not necessarily for you, but for Pathways or whoever who approved your transfer from the civil to the criminal. I mean, that's what I see. The problem is, like, whoever approved this, they should have given you a copy of this. And as far as I know, I mean, I'm not in the personnel or the union, but like every employee should have this, because you shouldn't have been put in this position.
Okay.
I feel that, there's violation here and makes your work harder, because if you're trying to do any discipline for other employees, this can create this. I mean, that's just, I wanted to share with you, but I encourage you, if you don't have the ethics ordinance, I know we provided a copy, but, to review, not just for you, but as a supervisor, to review with all your employees.
Okay.
And this, let me just follow up too, because you said that prior to this position here, you had worked for the county for how long?
I've been with the county now ever since 1987.
Okay. And so that's a fairly long period of time. And so I would assume you are familiar with the various policies of the county and whatnot with respect to various departments in that. So you, I would assume, was aware of conflict of interest, and that these are things that might have been overlooked by your supervisors or the people who were making those decisions, but maybe the burden was also on you to bring to their attention, if they didn't know, that there was a person that possibly in taking this position would have been under your, or maybe not immediate, but indirect supervision. And I know you said you mentioned that to them, but you said you didn't put anything in writing. You didn't file a conflict of interest form, just so they have knowledge of this beforehand. So I'm going to sort of while I think some of the burden is with your the people who made this decision, some of it also has to lay with you as well for not sort of bringing it to their attention. Because actually in your first response to the complainant's complaint, you state here, when she said that a person may not directly supervise, their question was, Tracy Gilbert, the wife of the clerk, Darren Gilbert, 1B, while she may not directly supervise them, she indirectly supervises them. You state here, it is true, I do not directly supervise my husband from whom I separated, but I indirectly supervise the clerks. And so you do, so you've answered the question that, yes, I indirectly, and you stated that I met with the clerks. And so you are in, if not direct supervision, you're in indirect supervision. And the clerks, the supervisors, pretty much you're their boss, so to speak. They come to you. And underneath them are the clerks, in which your husband is a clerk. So it seems like some of the allegations are that if a supervisor or a person has a problem, they go to the supervisor. The supervisor cannot resolve it, they come to you. And again, your husband is a clerk, and these other people are clerks. So they're also under these supervisors. So again, just getting back to the indirect supervision, it seems as though you are in that role, and it is indirect sort of contradiction to what's allowed under the ethics ordinance. I have to sort of piggyback on Ms. Hammoud that the people who made that decision should have looked at this further, but I'm also, again, going to state that you should have been a little more diligent in bringing it to their concern and attention, because you did know that your husband was working there. He was a clerk. And when you took this position, as you mentioned, you received a list of duties and your responsibilities, and you knew that you would be overlooking some of these clerks, I would say. All right, Ms. Hammoud.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a motion that there is a violation of ethics ordinance. I mean, I do not know if there's a certain things that we have to do, so I wanna just ask our attorney to, like, what would be the next step for a vote?
Well, I guess you can make a motion that there is a violation. I would note that in the record today, her immediate supervisor above her is taking the
Right.
position under Section D4 that an exception may be made by the appropriate elected official in cases where there is intermediate level of supervision between the division head or supervisor and the related employee. I mean, so that is in the record. I just wanted to note that for the record, there appears to be, at least by the county clerk, Ms. Garrett or Ms. Wade, a decision was made somewhere in there, whether she knew about it or not, before she was transferred to the new position. So, I think we could, preliminary recommendation, given that we didn't have a November meeting and that kind of delayed this, we'll allow the clerks to come back and address this preliminary recommendation.
So what you're saying, like, and I have here, like, Tuesday, October 22, I think there's something from Patricia Ways, you're referencing this, that they made an exception, approved it.
Well, it appears that they're stating before she was appointed in March of 2018, they evaluated the question of conflict of interest and applied this exception. That's kind of the way I read it, but whether that's true or not, maybe we'll hear from them on that, but that's what I took from their memo, which came in on October 22nd. She said she hadn't seen it, but they seem to be suggesting in the memo that they evaluated this prior to her being transferred. I mean, that's the way I'm giving it a liberal reading,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So, and you're referencing the sentence, our review noted that the exception provisions of the ethics ordinance were satisfied.
that's,
And the one before that, at the time of her assignment.
Okay.
So they're saying at the time of the assignment, they reviewed it and found, and are using the exception
they're
piece in
using the
that.
exception. That's kind of what,
I'm looking at 5 that says the provisions of 44D2 shall not restrict or in any way limit the continued employment of or the employment positions available to a public servant if they are employed on the date of the ordinance from which this chapter is derived as adopted by the county commission. That would seem to indicate that since we're talking about 44D2,
Yeah.
that Ms. Gilbert's exempt from that particular part of the ordinance. Because it would interfere with her opportunity for advancement or promotion. So the nepotism provision, I don't think, would apply, based upon the ordinance language itself.
Also, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, Mr. Young.
sometimes I look at things basically, and this indicated before it, number 2 says, a relative or domestic partner may not be, quote, hired. Hired
Right.
has a meaning. If we were talking about transfers or promotions or whatever, we should say that, which creates a direct or indirect supervision. Also, if you jump down to the policy, number 4, it's the policy of Wayne County not to discriminate to its employment and personnel actions with respect to its employees and applicants on the basis of marital status. Employees who marry or become domestic partners may continue employment as long as there is not a direct or indirect, and so on and so forth. So there's a recognition that this is not something as carved in cement, and if we take a marriage certificate and put 2 people together, then we must find a violation of this. And then, as you point out, Judge, that arguably it would not pertain to somebody who was employed at the time that this ethics ordinance was enacted. But even more so, I think that, I mean, and I agree with Ms. Hammoud, that this ordinance pertains to those who are hiring people, I think. I mean, I could be wrong. It's the way I look at it. And, I mean, is it incumbent upon the employee? Yeah, they're supposed to be aware of the ordinance. There's a lot of policies in Wayne County. There's a lot of policies in all of the facets of our lives. And we at this table might even have a different opinion as to what this means. So, to me, when I look at this, the purpose is to tell those who are hiring, don't be hiring people that are in these kind of situations. I mean, they obviously have to know about it in some form or another. And the other thing that bothers me is that not only was that the case at the time that that this occurred, but also, I keep going back to that, I don't know what I did with it, but that letter from the representative of the, here it is, from the Governmental Administrative Association. And Mr. Skillman indicates that I'm not aware of what powers the Wayne County Ethics Board vests in you and outside counsel. Should your powers include investigative authority, you would have discovered the office of the Wayne County Clerk had concluded that transferring Ms. Gilbert to the Department Administration 3 position would not violate section 40.4D2 of the Ethics Ordinance. Now, if that's true, I don't want to lay a violation or a potential violation at her feet if the supervisor or the one that's in charge of making these decisions, right or wrong, correct or incorrect, whatever the motivation is, made that determination. I mean, it's something that she indicated that she didn't know about, so I'm not going to say she relied on it. But she also indicates that she notified her supervisor or the person that she was talking to about this transfer, and that she told them one of the clerks in the office, court clerks or in the department, I should say, is my husband. I don't know what her words were, but that's what I gathered from what she had said. So this is one of those situations where we try to draft an ordinance that prohibits these kind of situations to occur, and then the unintended occurrence happens, and now we got to deal with it. I don't see how we can blame this lady for violation of this, given all of the information that she has given to us, and with a clear, simple, face value reading of the ordinance. I mean, that's where I'm at, so.
Well, what we have through the chair is a motion. I don't think it's been seconded. As I understand it, the motion was to find at least a technical violation of the ordinance. So if there's a second, we've had some discussion, but we have to vote on that motion if it's seconded.
Well, actually, we're still at the discussion stage. Now,
Well, the motion hasn't been
Has
seconded.
been seconded. Well, okay.
And if there's
Yeah,
no
second.
second, it just falls, right?
Right.
Correct.
No seconds, okay?
Is there a second? I'm not sure if the chair is allowed to second. Okay, a second from the chair. I'm going to second the motion. And my understanding in the Robert Rules of Order is once the motion has been made and it's been seconded, then, of course, the discussion. However, the person who made the motion leads the discussion. So, Ms. Hammoud, I'm going to ask you to address the board with respect to your motion.
Sure. I mean, and in my reading of the section mentioned, the 40-4 Standard of Conduct, Part D2, I mean, clearly it's like I look at it here, we do have, whether you call it a hire or transfer, that created a direct or indirect supervisor-subordinate relationship. I feel that, I mean, whoever made that decision violated that section of the ordinance. And I know it's maybe not clear that it doesn't specify a transfer, but in my mind, like, this is a hire. I mean, it not necessarily hire from the outside, it may be a transfer. So that's why I feel that the ordinance in this situation, has been violated. So I know we discussed it, but we can put it to vote.
I'm just going to add, looking at section 40-D2, as was mentioned, and again, I agree with what has been stated. I think Mr. Young clearly sort of eloquently laid this out, that a relative domestic partner may not be hired. However, if the employment would create a direct or indirect supervised subordinate relationship with the public servant, or create an actual conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. And again, it goes to the hiring. And while Ms. Gilbert has been working for the county, one could argue that if she's taken a different position, particularly a supervisory or departmental hiring position or what have you, it could be a hire into that position. Even though you're still moving within the county, it could be seen as being hired to another position. Subsection 3, D 2.3, 40-D3 says a public servant shall not influence the decisions to fill a position in Wayne County government with the person that is a relative or domestic partner of the county public servant. D4, it is the policy of Wayne County not to discriminate in its employment and personnel actions with respect to its employees and applicants on the basis of marital status. Employees who marry or become domestic partners may continue employment as long as there is not a direct or indirect supervised subordinate relationship between the employees. And clearly here, again, not laying any blame, there is at least an indirect supervisor relationship. I do also note what Mr. Thomas had reflected on the fact that it says here on the D5, the provision of the section 40-4D2 shall not restrict or in any way limit the continued employment of, or in any way limit, or the employment positions available to the public servant if they are employed in the day of the ordinance from which this is derived. But it still would seem that the continued employment, so I would take that to be a little more maybe literal, that it continued employment from which the position that you were in prior to this position that you were hired into or applied for and was given, that placed you in, if not direct, indirect, sort of supervisory position to your husband. Again, not laying a blame, but it does seem like those who made this decision, I'm not sure how they went about determining that the ethics ordinance was not violated. So again, the blame cannot just be squarely with you. And if you did inform them of this situation, then again, it pretty much lays with them. I'm one of these people who like to follow this old CYA rule that, you sort of cover yourself by, following the conflict of interest or letting someone know in writing that this is the situation with my husband or relative that would be up under me. But again, if that wasn't done, you did state that you told them this. So then that would be the burden would have been on them to determine any violations. So any other discussion at this point?
If
Yes,
I may,
Mr. Thomas.
the complaint in this case was filed against Ms. Gilbert. Ms. Gilbert did not hire herself. I don't see any way at all that she has violated the ordinance because she wasn't in a position to hire. She is also able to take advantage of item number 5 that says she can apply for other positions. The complaint should have been filed against whoever made the decision that is viewed as a violation of D2. And that being the situation, my position is I have to vote against this motion because, to my mind, it's just unfair to Ms. Gilbert.
So just
Yes, Ms. Hamud.
yeah, I mean, when we vote for like a violation of the ordinance or not, is it against whoever they complain against? I just want to clarify that.
All that's in front of you
Yeah.
is the complaint against Ms. Gilbert. I
Okay.
don't know that you can find a generic violation by some unknown person out there. I think
I get it,
you
okay. So
confined.
with that, I will withdraw my motion. Because I agree with Judge Thomas. I mean, the way I look at, there is a violation, but it's not necessarily, against
Ms.
Mr.
Gilbert.
Yes, Dr. Cornell.
The other part I just want to throw out there for discussion is the conflict of interest. And part of the conflict of interest is how is Ms. Gilbert benefiting from this conflict of interest? And I don't see any benefit. She's not receiving anything. She's not getting anything. And I don't see that part of a conflict of interest as it relates to the ordinance.
Mr. Chair, not to belabor this, but just to continue with what Judge Thomas talked about, I was looking at this also. A relative partner may not be hired. She had nothing to do with hiring herself. She also did not make the decision to transfer herself. Yeah, she requested it, but that's what anybody in any type of situation may do if they want to better themselves or, as she indicated, learn something different. So it seems to me that the decision maker on all of the matters we're discussing doesn't lie with Ms. Gilbert. I mean, that's my opinion. And if a decision was made to do so, which obviously it was by her superior, then that's the person that needs to be required to answer to some sort of violation of this if they knew it was going on and/or if they looked at these other provisions. So I just don't see, I agree, I don't see how this, a violation of this would lie with Ms. Gilbert.
So can I put another motion?
Sure, let me, before you put that motion, and then first off, before we
Gotta vote on
allow you to
no.
withdraw that
Oh, you
motion.
withdraw.
Well, hold on, before we allow you to draw that motion, first we have to, since once the motion is put out there and it's discussed, and I'm just sticking with Robert Rules of Order, we have to vote to allow you to withdraw it, because we have discussed it, so one, we'll hold that vote, but I just want to add, I'm not sure if the complainants, in this case, who knew that Mr. Gilbert was their colleague and that his boss's boss was his wife, if they, in filing this complaint, would have known who hired their boss's boss. So I'm not sure if that seems like that might be an unreasonable burden would be placed on complainants to know who hired who. I mean, I'm not sure if the average person would. And again, this is just something I'm just putting out here. We don't have to vote on that. I'm not sure if, and I understand the relevance. I totally understand that. I'm not sure if they would know who the hiring parties would be. And generally, most people would know who hired who, but they will understand that person is in the position and they may be making decisions, but they may not have known who actually was behind hiring or appointing that person. So with that said, Ms. Carnell.
That may be true, and not disagreeing with that, but even if we proceed with this, it doesn't preclude them, or, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it doesn't stop them from filing another complaint with who they now know who hired Ms. Gilbert.
With that said, at this point, I believe Ms. Ahmoud wants to withdraw her motion. And at this point,
Yes.
Is there a second to withdraw the motion?
Second?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion has been withdrawn. Now, I believe there has been a second motion that has been proposed, and we'll hear that person, Ms. Hammoud.
Yes, I'd like to propose to dismiss this complaint and
Without prejudice.
without prejudice. Thank you.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
And per chair, I want to be excused.
Yes, Ms.
Thank
Gilbert. Ms. Hammoud. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert, for being here. Thank you for your time in this matter.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did Lafayette's football team do well this year? That's all important. That's most important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, have a quorum, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay.
I hate to ask, but did you go there or something? Is that-
I graduated in '66.
Oh, you know, he's an Ivy League guy.
Was that even accredited back then?
It was, it was, just barely. It's also the home of Larry Holmes,
Oh, really?
heavyweight boxer,
sure.
and Dixie Cup,
Okay,
Oh,
Easton, Pennsylvania.
okay.
wow.
And there used to be a women's clothing manufacturer, Mr. Pants. They were headquartered in Easton. And at one time, there was a plan to build a subway from New York City to Easton, because they're only 60 miles apart.
Oh, okay.
And they were gonna run a subway, and that was during Prohibition. For some reason, they thought Easton would be a good place to have a subway stop.
Had the Eastern assassin.
Larry Holmes. Yeah.
You know, we've heard Lehigh University or college or whatever over the year. I had no idea, though. I mean, if my life depended on being able to tell you where Lehigh, what state Lehigh's in, now I know.
It's in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But it is also the school that Lee Iacocca attended.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
It's
I did not
an
know that.
engineer, very well-known engineering school.
Okay.
And Lafayette and Lehigh have one of the oldest college football rivalries in the country.
Okay.
You
we
and I
got
just went to Michigan State, right? So,
Well, I know C.J. McCollum went to Lehigh.
Okay, so I'm going to move right on our roll call. I know we have to wrap this up soon. Moving on to the next order of business, item 2 under the our today's agenda, suggested changes to the ethics ordinance. And I think everybody at this point have had the opportunity to review those changes. I know Dr. Carnell at the last hearing, we sort of tabled making any sort of final decisions until we. Because you had spearheaded this and led the way, we wanted to get your input on it before we sort of voted on it. And the next step, my understanding, is to go to the commission for a hearing on the matter. So we wanted to make sure you had some input. At this time, is there any additional changes or any other requested changes? And if so, if not, then if we can possibly place this matter before a vote to adopt it.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the Ethics Board approve the changes made to the ordinance for movement to the commission for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Just one
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, before we do that, we did receive a request from Mr. Youngblood for a copy of these changes. I guess I don't have any strong feelings, but the board hadn't voted to move forward. I assume we can share that with him after the board has recommended sending the changes to the county commission.
Yes.
I would say yes.
Yes.
And so all
In
in.
fact, if I may, perhaps once we vote on it finally, if, I thought we already had, but if we haven't, once we do, I think a copy should be sent to all of the electeds.
Yes.
Perhaps with the annual report, we could
Yes.
attach a copy to the
Perfect.
annual
That's
report.
All right. Okay, so all in favor, I believe it is aye. All opposed? So the ayes have it. So adopted, so moved. My understanding, this will be sent out to all the department heads and as well as submitted to, I believe it's all the electeds, and as well as sent to Mrs., is it Ms. Johnson for her review to take to the commission? Yes, Mr. Slezak.
Through the chair, actually, it would be submitted through Chair Bell's office, but obviously, Felicia will be, and Ham and I will be all dealing with that, so, but, Felicia for her review. But informally, and I'll give, Mr. Williams the formal address, but it goes through the commission chair's office for her for her to pass it along to commission staff.
Thank you for that, Mr. Slezak. Moving on to our next order of business, we're under item D, which is new business. Right now, we have the item number 1 is the communication from Lisa M. Cadez, regarding Lisa Land. And I think we did have a copy of the complaint from Ms. Cadez.
This is about the committee name, who paid for a campaign sign?
Yes, but
That's,
just through the chair, I believe I had already recommended that this had to be dismissed. It didn't fall within the jurisdiction of the Ethics Board. This appeared to be 2 city clerks somewhere out in the county, not in the, and when I asked Ms. Cadez for who was involved, she indicated it wasn't a county employee, wasn't a county contractor. Not sure that falls within the jurisdiction of the Ethics Board.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'd
Ms.
like to make a motion that this case be dismissed based on our attorney's recommendation without prejudice.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, so moved. Moving on to such other matters as may be properly submitted before the board.
Through the chair, we do have several such other matters, or a few such other matters. One was the annual year-end report that you all have, I've supplied to all of you, so, and that,
Prior approval, Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry, what was it again?
Annual report.
The
The
annual
annual
report.
report. Yes, and one, yes, now, this was just given to us this morning. I'm not sure if we've had the opportunity to look at this. I know we are coming up to the end of the year. And I believe this has to be submitted by December 31st, am I correct?
No, it's the 15th.
Oh, I'm sorry,
actually,
December
but-
15th, okay, well, that's.
Which was
so
a
we-
Sunday.
So we're actually, okay, beyond the date. Has anyone had the opportunity to take a look at this?
No.
I have.
I've looked at it.
I've looked at it. My only question I would ask to Mr. Williams, under the issue of the Wayne County Executive Evans' complaint against Eric Sabree, it states the board ultimately concluded that there was no violation of the ethics ordinance after receiving the answers, responses, and holding multiple hearings. Just for clarification, was there a finding of no violation or a finding to dismiss? We voted to dismiss the complaint for failure to prosecute or because the complainants didn't show up. There was a motion to dismiss. So does the motion to dismiss serves as a failure to find a violation or?
I don't think we granted the motion to dismiss. My understanding was that the board did not find a sufficient support for a violation, but because we did consider it, even though the complainant did not come before the board, there was a finding of sufficient basis to proceed without the complainant even coming in to support the complaint, but the decision of the board was a decision that there was not a violation of the ethics ordinance based on the evidence received, and it was not to grant the motion to dismiss.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, that we did vote on the motion I think at the initial hearing to reject the motion to dismiss. The motion at the second hearing was renewed by his attorney, and I believe it was Mr. Hendricks that took up the motion and asked to put the motion back on the table. I think it was seconded by Mrs. Carnell, and we voted on the motion to dismiss. And it was the failure to, as his attorney has stated, the complainant had failed to appear and at either hearing. I thought that was what.
That's
No,
not my
that's not my
recollection.
recollection either.
Recollection? Okay.
No.
So the motion that we voted on was the motion, it was not the renewed motion to dismiss. It was actually a motion as a finding of a violation.
That was my understanding of the motion that was voted on and decided on that complaint. It was not to grant the motion to dismiss as renewed at any point in time. Now, that's my understanding.
Okay, Chair stands corrected. Well, then, yes, okay. So other than that, is there any issues or concerns anyone has with any of the?
I have a question.
Yes, Dr. Carnell.
On the second page, in the middle of it, C, number 3, Mario Miles against Tracy Gilbert. This is the same Tracy Gilbert? Just that we have another complaint coming?
Yes, that just was filed, yes.
Through the chair, same issue?
No, it's a slightly different issue. It appeared to be a person at the counter who felt they didn't get proper respect.
How do I join that?
At least from
Because we had it 24/7.
you know, I'm like, well,
Everybody.
Come on.
every lawyer's gonna be filing this complaints.
I want to file a couple of those as we leave here.
He must not have been over there with some of those clerks.
We have already received the complaint?
Yes, we have. I have not made a recommendation. I sort of reviewed it. It came in this week, I think, or late last.
It was about a week ago. You know,
Yeah.
Mr. Miles dropped it off.
Yeah.
So,
So the response period hasn't even expired.
No.
But it's in the report because it was filed this year.
Now, the only change to the annual report that I would suggest is to the board is that I add that the ordinance revisions are attached, because in referrals in the section miscellaneous, so that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I need to go back to something. I'm reading the minutes from July 10th, and it says Hendricks Carnell approved, dismiss Mr. Evans' allegation of ethics ordinance violation against Mr. Sabri. Motion carried.
So did I go back to what I had talked about, that there was a motion to dismiss, or where are you looking at that at?
The July 10th meeting minutes.
So can you read that again? I'm not sorry.
It was approved. It was, Hendricks made the motion, I second. Approved.
What was the motion for again?
Dismiss Mr. Evans' allegation of ethics ordinance violation against Mr. Sabri. Motion carried.
Motion to dismiss it. Was there a motion, I'm sorry, was there a motion to, that of no violation, or is the motion to dismiss the complaint against Mr. Evans made by, I think, Mr. Sabri?
It just says that it was approved. Dismiss Mr. Evans' allegation of ethics ordinance violation against Mr. Sabri. Motion carried. You voted no. Mr. Pinkins voted no.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's right. Okay. All right, so if there's no objections, then to the.
So moved to approve the annual report as indicated,
Yes.
Is there a
As
second?
amended?
or as amended, thank you.
Amended?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Williams,
Well, I
I'm
will
gonna-
send you a revised version that it says that the ordinance is attached, and maybe try and clean up that it was, Sabri was dismissed, the complaint was dismissed based on a motion.
Right, at this time, I believe we're moving on to any other,
Actually, we still have a couple other, sorry, through the chair, sorry, we had a couple other, such other matters. Just to notify the board, 3 terms on the board are expiring December 31st, and yesterday we sent letters to the respected elected officials that, obviously, that the terms are expiring. It's for Judge Thomas, Dr. Carnell, and Mr. Young. You all are eligible, you are all eligible to serve another 4-year term if you and the respective electeds agree to that. And, you are one more 4-year term for all of you if that's the way it works. And, but so they've all, we did the letter yesterday and I emailed it to the respective electives and several of the people around them too. So it's just more than one person saw it, so. Right. And then the other thing is scheduling a new 2021, the January meeting. The third Wednesday is unavailable because the commission meetings were kind of thrown off for next month because the first Wednesday, we normally have committee meetings, that's New Year's Day, so obviously we're going to be closed. So what the 2 Wednesdays that are available in January are January 8th and January 22nd. I know Dr. Carnell said she's available for both. Mr. Hendricks emailed me and said he's available for both. I think Ms. Hammoud said
At the 22nd.
22nd, yeah, 8th or the 22nd. And Ms. Hammoud told me she's available for both, so.
Hendrick said just the 22nd.
No, he actually followed up on an email to me.
Got it.
He
Okay.
did follow up, and he said the 8th is available for him as
Okay,
well,
sorry.
but,
I'm available either day.
Same here.
yeah, so.
Since my term is ending on December 31st, I think somebody else should have an opportunity to sit, permit, no, I'm just kidding. I'm good on the 22nd.
So do we want to schedule the next meeting for January 22nd at 9 a.m.?
Yeah, I would say the 8th is just too close.
Yeah. Yeah, and, the fact that we'll be preparing for, we're just getting back ourselves. And also our office, I'll be remote checking my email, on my phone, but our office is closed from the 24th through the 1st. We return on the 2nd.
What?
No, and actually, the 24th, our final day is going to be Monday, and, until the break, before the break, and then we'll be closed from the 24th, and we'll be returning on January 2nd. But I'll be remote checking my email, my email, not the ethics board email, but my email, so.
So will you be remotely checking this from Tahiti or somewhere like that? Was that where we're going?
No, just from Dearborn.
Okay.
Only one city over.
Mr. Slee's like, come on, play with our imaginations here. Come on, take us there. Dearborn.
That's where I'm
Someplace warm.
I'm going to
like
Tahiti.
southeastern Michigan.
to Tahiti, and then next year.
vacation.
Yeah.
Dr. Carnell, just go ahead and rub it in, why don't you? Just rub it in. While the rest of us are here
Not
cold.
yet, I'm not going yet, but I got all the
Bucket
plans ready, yeah. Talk to
And
the
no
travel
such other matters.
Okay, at this,
For such other matters, yeah.
at this point, we're gonna move to item F. Any public comments at this time? I think, Mr. Commissioner is here. Mr. Colleen. Good morning, Commissioner. How are you?
Good morning. I'll use mic here.
Thank you for being here, sir.
Figured out those mics. Good morning, Mr. Chair
Good morning, Mr. Commissioner. How are you?
and members of the board. Tim Colleen, Wayne County Commission, District 1. First, I wanted to come today. First, I wanted to thank everybody on this board for their volunteer service to such a vital a function for government. Secondly, I was on the committee that drafted the ethics ordinance originally that created this board. And as such, I'm well aware of some of the weaknesses in that ordinance. So I very much look forward to your report and what you like, what your recommendations are. And I really want to take all of this up once the chair gets it and really have some public hearings. Michigan is widely regarded as, if not the worst, then the 49th state for ethics in the United States. It gets reported in the press on somewhat of a regular basis, and for me, unfortunately, our ethics ordinance kind of followed what the state was doing at the time, which I didn't think was adequate. So I look forward to a more robust discussion because this is vital that these matters get handled and above board. People need to see that their government can work. So again, thank you, and appreciate a little time today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Again, thank you for being here. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn at this time? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Happy holiday. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. Ms. Lewis, thank you so much for all your help.
No, not yet, not yet.
Lewis.
Sometime within the next year and a half. Yeah. I got all the particulars. I just gotta just narrow down a date.
Likewise, weather-wise, I mean,
Yeah.
wintertime here is